Is everybody in? Is everybody in? The show is about to begin.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Concerts That Made Us. I'm your host Brian, and before we get into this week's episode, I just wanted to let you all know that Spotify is now allowing you to rate podcasts. This is great for podcasts, and it'll really help get the podcasts into more ears. So I know a good few of you listen on Spotify, so at the end of this episode, if you just click on the rate and give us 5 stars, I'd really appreciate it. Really helps the show, you know. Now, my guest this week is Calvin Smith, a singer-songwriter who happens to have a very interesting podcast. His podcast is called Unquestionable with Calvin Smith. It's about ancient technology. I've always been fascinated with that kind of thing. So if that's something you're interested in, you're gonna love this episode. Now, without further ado, let's get on with the show. Hey Calvin, you're very welcome to Concerts That Made Us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Ryan.
No problem. I'm glad to have you on. So, you've got a very interesting podcast. I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. My podcast is Unquestionable with Calvin Smith, and it's Unquestionable Podcast on YouTube. And I've always kind of been a bit of a history and science nerd. I'm the kind of guy who sits down and reads, school science and history books for fun. My wife thinks that I'm crazy, but so I like to read all that boring stuff and just to know more about our past. And I've just always been enthralled by the theory. If you're not familiar with authors like Graham Hancock, Brian Forrester I had on my podcast at some point. So it's more so kind of looking into the possibility that these ancient people may have had some sort of technology that we lost at some point, or maybe we have right now and we just don't realize that they had it that long ago. And it's just kind of figuring out the mystery of, human origins. When did we start? Why did we decide to civilize and, make cars, and, how do we get to where we are today? Is kind of what my podcast is about. And then I'm also a history nerd. I've read the Bible, but I'm atheist myself. And so I talk about, my point of view from, religions. And once I'm back from my hiatus, which is what I'm doing right now, I'm, getting this room all set up so I can start recording again. And once I'm back from my hiatus, I plan to cover a lot more religious topics, because the majority of what I've covered is either paranormal, like aliens, ghosts, or ancient technology. But it's kind of the gist of my podcast. It's nothing music related.
Right. It's very interesting though. I've always been interested in history anyway, but as well the whole concept that they might have had technology. I suppose I've leaned more towards the sort of paranormal or the alien side of it.
Right.
But I've often heard people saying, if we tried to build the pyramids today, we wouldn't have the technology to build them. Or, even the Romans take their roads, how well made they are. And then you look at our roads today and like 6 months after they're built, they're falling apart.
Exactly.
What are some of the most interesting things you've found out along the way?
Well, so I made a TikTok account. Okay. And so I if anyone wants to follow me on TikTok, it's Unquestionable Calvin on TikTok. And I post during my hiatus, I've kind of been posting small, clips and stuff there to kind of keep, my audience, getting a little something from me while I'm gone. And so I've been so my biggest thing is the Sphinx. I'm very enthralled by the Egyptian Sphinx, and there's a documentary out that's called The Mysteries of the Sphinx, and it came out in, I think, 1997, if I'm not mistaken. And it talks about the evidence that the Great Sphinx is older than modern academia is making it out to be. So,
Right.
For example, the Minister of Antiquities in Egypt at the time, his name was Dr. Zahi Hawass. I think it's a different guy now who's a little bit more open to the idea of things. But he came to the conclusion that the Sphinx is about 4,500 years old, built in the time of Pharaoh Chephren, during that time. So that's kind of the common consensus that you would read in any history book today. But a guy named John Anthony West, who passed away in, I think, 2018 or 2019, he actually went to the Sphinx, and he just felt like the way the Sphinx was constructed was not, it didn't make sense to how, it's made out of pure bedrock. It's 60 feet under in the bedrock. So you walk up to the Sphinx and you're actually eye level with the Sphinx, and then you have to look down into the Sphinx enclosure to like see the entire body of the Sphinx below. So it's actually in the bedrock. And he noticed that around the Sphinx enclosure on the inside, there was weird erosion that was going on. It wasn't wind erosion like it should have been, because obviously there's no water. But the problem was that there was significant water erosion on the Sphinx and in the Sphinx enclosure, and that's not possible if it was built only 4,500 years ago, because there wasn't that amount of precipitation at that time. The last time there was at least 9,000 to 10,000 years ago. So he brings in professional geologist Robert Schoch. He's also a skeptic about it. He was like, come on, Sphinx, it's 4,500 years old. This is old news. But he figured John Anthony West was going to pay for his ticket to Egypt. Okay, sure. Free trip to Egypt, and I get to look at the Sphinx. Why not? So he goes to Egypt, and he said within 3 minutes of looking at the Sphinx, he knew for a fact it had to be at least 9,000 years old based off of the erosion. He said almost immediately after looking at it in person. They go into this in great detail in the documentary Mysteries of the Sphinx, which is available on YouTube too. You can actually type it in on YouTube and find it. And I actually did a whole podcast talking about the age of the Sphinx and this documentary and everything. And they actually present this evidence to like a peer-reviewed type of conference, and they get laughed out of the auditorium. And it's funny because they're like, where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? But, Robert Schoch and John Anthony West are like, we're literally showing it to you. It's literally right here. So yeah, that's one of the smoking guns for me is the Egyptian Sphinx. Not to mention that the head of the Sphinx is, it used to be a lion's head. It's theorized to be a female lion. And the head of the Sphinx is said to be a depiction of Pharaoh Chephren, the person who built the Sphinx, quote unquote. But Dr. Frank Domingo, who is a detective for the New York Department of Justice, he actually did a facial analysis on it and determined that there's absolutely no resemblance to Chephren whatsoever. So why would they not carve who is like Pharaoh or whatever into the Sphinx? So that's the biggest smoking gun for me, is that the fact that the Sphinx has significant evidence that it's upwards of 10,000 years old, and it doesn't even look like the Pharaoh that they're claiming built it. The only reason why they're saying that that Pharaoh built the Sphinx is because there was actually a statue of him that was found directly next to the Sphinx.
Right.
That's the only they're like, well, his statue's here, so
it must be him.
It's like, it's not like there's statues of tons of other pharaohs everywhere or anything. Yeah. And that's just talking about, Egypt. That's not even including like Peru has a ton of really, with like elongated skulls, people with naturally elongated skulls.
Yeah.
Very weird stuff. And that's what I talked about. Brian Forrester, one of the researchers, talking about ancient lost technology. I had him on my second episode of my podcast. And, we talked about the elongated skulls and some weird, enigmatic sites in Peru, because that's where he lives right now. So he researches stuff in Peru.
Yeah. What's the story with the skulls? Because I'd heard two different versions. One was that they were real, and another one was that they were hoaxed. Are they in fact real?
They are in fact real, 100%. Brian Forrester actually has some actual skulls that he found that are sitting on his desk. So he's like, I mean, this is like, he's like, this is it, you know. They're 100% real. Now, the biggest thing with the elongated skulls is people are thinking that these are artificially elongated, you know, because what they would usually do around that area is they would lay newborn babies down on a board and they put like a plank kind of triangular on their head. And they literally would lay this baby there for a couple of years. This baby would lay there for years and it would elongate its skull as it's developing. And then, you know, they'd take the boards off and the skull would just kind of keep going. But that is, you can easily see, you know, it's obvious when they've done that. You know, their skulls are kind of really wonky and weird shaped and uneven and weird. Yeah. But no, the ones that are in Paracas, Peru specifically, which is right off the coastline, they're naturally elongated. There's no evidence of the boards being laid there or any type of binding. There's no binding evidence, no like, you know, rope, you know, signatures there. Also, what's interesting is that if you look at like my skull, for example, down the middle, there's one suture that, you know, one crack that goes down the middle of your skull, and then another crack that kind of half moons around the other side of your skull. What's interesting about the Paracas skulls is they don't have the middle suture. It doesn't exist.
Right.
It's only the half moon suture. So why do only these Paracas skulls not have a suture in the middle? Not to mention, they also all have two pinholes in the back on the very top of their skull and the very back. They have two little pinholes, almost as if they're performing brain surgery.
Jeez.
Yeah, and that's found in almost all the Paracas skulls as well. A lot of them still have hair. Some of them have red hair, which is uncommon for that area. A lot of people in that area have, you know, black hair. But a lot of the Paracas skulls were redheads, which is very...
It's very strange.
Yeah, very strange. So lots of weird stuff going on with Paracas, and it's all, you know, 100% real. It's just a matter of that they don't know whether the elongated skulls is natural or if it's intentional. But I mean, Brian Forrester and many other researchers argue for the fact that that is natural.
Yeah. If they're natural, though, that must mean that they're almost some sort of different species, or, you know, something like that, maybe. Or obviously they were like a bloodline of, say, royalty, something like that, you know. Right.
It's like, was it like a genetic deformity, just a normal, you know, genetic disease that got passed down throughout, you know, that enclosed area, or, you know, was it something different? I don't know. Were they aliens? People are like, you know, obviously they're putting on their tinfoil hats and, you know, going, they're aliens, you know. But that's because of like the structures that are in Paracas, Peru too, the stuff that they were building. I mean, the rock placement is so exact that you can't even fit a piece of paper in between the rock creases. It's so exact and smoothly cut, and it's incredible how they built this stuff on top of the elongated skulls.
Yeah, and it's they weren't doing it with saws or diggers or stuff like that. Like, it's crazy to think how precise they were, how exact.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that they're, you know, modern academia is arguing that they were using copper chisels and wooden hammers to do all of this. And it you know, you can literally look up Dr. Zahi Hawass trying to do the, you know, for example, the pyramid in Egypt, the Great Pyramid. It's composed of 2.3 million blocks and was estimated to take about 20 to 23 years to complete the Great Pyramid. But the problem is that all 2.3 million blocks didn't even come from the Giza Plateau. They actually came from 500 miles down the Nile River. So what they did is they cut and carved all these blocks and then traveled them 500 miles up the river by boat. And these are, you know, 20, 30 ton blocks, mind you. Good luck finding a boat at that time that could do that, because they haven't found a boat that could do that yet. They were traveling 500 miles up the river, and they apparently did this in less than 20 years with 2.3 million blocks.
That's crazy.
Unless they had some sort of technology that allowed them to do it faster, you know, or complete the task, you know, And that's a big thing, is that like Ancient Aliens, is kind of taking the narrative of ancient technology, and they're like, oh, it was aliens moving it. And it's like, no, they even twist Brian Forrester's words around. And I had a guy named Dr. Greg Little on, who he talks about the existence of Atlantis. And that's something else that I'm pretty passionate about. And he was on Ancient Aliens, and he said he's never going to be back on there because they twisted and edited his words to say stuff that he didn't say. So now he sounds like a loony on there.
Oh man.
So he said he's never going to go on Ancient Aliens. I think he said he even like filed a lawsuit or something against them.
I wouldn't blame him.
Yeah. So I would definitely say no one watch Ancient Aliens for real information.
Yeah, I think in recent years the Discovery Channel has leaned more towards entertainment than actual scientific fact.
Exactly.
There's one other one I was thinking of. You're surely interested in it, Atlantis.
Yes. Yes.
What's your theory on Atlantis?
Yeah, so I'm of the idea that Atlantis was, people hear the word Atlantis and they immediately are like, whoa, like that's crazy. That's there's no city in the sea, that sunk, blah, blah, blah. The problem is that when you dig deeper into the story of Atlantis and then look at just, geography in general, you can see in certain places around the world where an Atlantis type of civilization could have existed.
Yeah.
Like, for example, the Rakat structure in Africa, that's actually in Mauritania, Africa. And it is, it's west of Egypt. It's like literally a whole state over from Egypt on the left. And so the Rakat structure in Mauritania, it's about 23 kilometers in diameter, and it's like a perfect circle. It's called the Eye of Africa, or the Eye of the Sahara. And what's interesting about it is that it's covered in salt deposits. And that means that at some point it was filled with salt water, but it's in the middle of Africa. Like, it's in the Sahara Desert, and it's salt water. Like, why is that there?
Yeah.
Unless the sea level was, higher at some point and, filled that fissure in. And it's, the Rakat structure consists of 3 to 4 rings, just like Plato in his Critias and Timaeus text describes Atlantis being. And not to mention, there's elephant bones that are found in the Rakat structure, which Plato states that the story of Atlantis, they talk about how they had elephants and stuff. And I guess I should put for context. So Plato obviously came up with the story of Atlantis. Well, I'll get into that. He wrote down the story of Atlantis, but how he got the story of Atlantis is, a lot of people don't know this, is his relative Solon, who lived a couple hundred years before him, is like his great grandfather or something. He was a lawmaker and he was a historian. So he wanted to learn more about how he could make Greece a lot more of and specifically Athens, a lot more of like a civilized type of, way to live. He wanted to make it more of a democracy.
Yeah.
So he figured, I'm going to go to Egypt and I'm going to see what Egypt has going on and get some ideas from them. So he travels to Egypt, and when he gets there, he gets to this place called, I think it's called the Temple of Isis, if I'm not mistaken. And he goes in there, the Temple of Sais, that's what it is. It's the Temple of Sais. He goes in there. He talks to this guy called the Sanchez of Sais, and he's like a priest in there. And Sanchez tells him of a story of an ancient civilization that was west of Egypt, and it was an island, and it sunk in a single day of misfortune from flooding. So Solon goes, wow, that's a cool story. He takes it back to Greece and he passes it down through the generations until it eventually lands in Plato's lap, and Plato decides to write this down. So it was oral tradition up until Plato got it. And Plato, so technically, that's what a lot of people don't know, is that the story of Atlantis actually comes from Egypt. It doesn't even come from Plato itself. A lot of people think, his Critias and Timaeus text he just made it up off the top of his head.
Yeah.
And that's totally inaccurate. It's actually this Sanchez of Sais guy. And this Temple of Sais doesn't even exist anymore. It's actually nothing but ruins now. So it's not like there's anything to like go back and check. So he describes that in a single day and night of misfortune, it was sunken into the sea, and it's no longer accessible by land. And so, kind of going off that little bit of a tangent, 11,800 to 12,600 years ago, there was a massive cataclysm called the Younger Driest epoch. And that's basically when the planet went through a sudden cool down, froze everything, kind of a mini ice age. And then there was a sudden warm up. Almost overnight, the whole planet warmed up, and it actually melted all these ice caps, which caused a massive flooding over like the African continent and a little bit in North America and South America, and for the most part missed like Russia and that kind of area. And that was 12,800 to 11,600 years ago is what it was. And that's kind of the basis. A lot of things like the Rakhat structure, there's actually artifacts that are found in the Rakhat structure, for example. And some of these artifacts are dating back 10,000 plus years old. And that would be right about the epoch of the Younger Driest. And if you look at the Rakhat structure, you can actually see striations in the sand. You can go on Google Earth and type in Eye of Africa and literally see it right there. It's plain as day. And you can see striations in the sand from Google Earth even, and it would show how flooding would go over that. And this flooding would have been caused by either comet impact, which is what people like Randall Carlson are researching more. He's a well-known geologist who's been studying the Younger Driest for many years, and he's one of the whistleblowers on it. He's one of the guys who kind of, brought it to attention, kind of discovered it, I guess you could say. Yeah. So it would have been either comet impact, which they're thinking there could have been a comet that impacted the west of Greenland around that time. And that's actually because of ice caps melting. They're actually seeing the crater now. So it's theorized that could have been it. Or people like Dr. Robert Schoch, who I mentioned about the Sphinx, he actually studies sun flare activity over the past, couple million years also. And he thinks that actually there was a massive sun flare that happened, which actually essentially vaporized the snow and, turned it all into water. And there's evidence all around Egypt of what look like literal granite statues that have melted, and that literally can't go. We don't have any technology that could have done that, let alone could have they. And it looks like what would have been some sort of, radiation from the sun that would have melted it. That's evidence everywhere around Earth with that. And Robert Schoch's argument is that sun flares are far more common than comet impacts are. So, and we're actually overdue for a sun flare. So he said, he's kind of claiming, don't be surprised if, there's a sudden sun flare that wipes out all of humanity. But
oh yeah, don't worry about it. Don't be
no, don't worry about it. All right.
Oh,
so yeah, man. Atlantis, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I think it did exist, just based off of there's just so much evidence around it. And if people want more evidence regarding evidence and ancient technology in general, you can check out my podcast Unquestionable with Calvin Smith, and I talk about it a ton. You can check out my Instagram where I post about stuff all the time. I'm on Facebook and TikTok. I post all kinds of stuff. So I mean, I've got plenty of evidence.
Yeah. I always find it interesting though. It's like every civilization or every part of the world have their own version of Atlantis.
Yeah.
Even Ireland, for instance, in the very early maps of Ireland, the very first map of Ireland, there was an island off the west coast that isn't there anymore. And the last sighting of it was in like 1890. Someone wrote down that they could see it from the shore and there was clouds around it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But,
that's cool.
We can Google Earth now and there's nothing there. But I was reading a thing on it that suggested that might be Atlantis, because there's evidence that thousands of years ago there was actually Egyptians and Greek people that had made it to Ireland. And
yes,
that's another thing I find fascinating, that like when you're in school, you never get told that, Egyptians made it around the world, Greeks made it around the world, You think everyone is like a self-contained little civilization, but when you look into it, everyone did actually mix and make it around.
Exactly.
But, so they could have come over here, and maybe that's what the inspiration for Atlantis was as well. Or, I know South America has their version, and there's history or there's evidence in all over the place for where it could have been or what it was,
And I plan on doing, actually, I've just been doing research for, future episodes that I'm going to be recording. And there's this area called the Yonaguni Monument that's off the coast of Okinawa, Japan. And what's really crazy, it's literally about 16 feet underwater and it's straight up a pyramid. Right. There was a guy who was looking for hammerhead sharks, and he dove in that area because he thought this is going to be a good area for it. He dove, and there literally is a step pyramid, like on 16 feet under the water off the coast of Okinawa, Japan, and they call it the Yonaguni Monument. There's pillars, literally. I mean, it's straight up a pyramid. And once again, academia is like, this is natural. But once, trust me, I'm coming across some evidence that is just demonstrable that it was man-made. Regardless of the age of it, it had to have been man-made, and that's what I'm going to kind of go over in the podcast once I finish doing research for it. But it's crazy, the evidence for it. It's called the Yonaguni Monument. That's crazy. But yeah, you mentioned Atlantis being in multiple locations, and yeah, there's a guy who's researching it right now. His name is Dr. Kimura, and he is calling it Lemuria because that's kind of like the Taiwan Atlantis, I guess.
Right.
And yeah, going off also what you said about Egyptians traveling around the world. Yes, absolutely. So a lot of people don't realize. Did you know that there was Egyptian mummies found in the Grand Canyon?
I actually didn't. No.
Yeah. I actually found that out not too long ago. Literal Egyptian mummies, like in coffins and everything, found inside the Grand Canyon. Not to mention, there was a golden, head bust of King Akhenaten and Queen Nefertiti that was also found in the Grand Canyon.
Oh man!
Egyptian pharaohs in the Grand Canyon, and this is 100% true. It was in the Kincaid's Cave, which is now off limits. You are not allowed to go in there because they also have Egyptian hieroglyphics in there. They found a golden tablet that had Egyptian hieroglyphics in the Grand Canyon. They also have an area called the Buddhist Temple in the Grand Canyon, and a lot of people don't realize that because it's also off limits, and it has a statue of the Buddha in the Grand Canyon, and it's totally off limits. You're not allowed to access it, but it is in fact there. You can Google it and it comes up, but you can't visit it. Why were Asians in America, that long ago? Why were Egyptians in there? It's crazy. And not to mention, north of Chicago, there was a Egyptian, it's like a little coffin toy kind of. And it dates back to about the old dynasty, and it was found north of Chicago in Illinois. So why is this Egyptian artifact in Chicago?
Yeah, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
So yeah, I mean, Egyptians 100% were here before Columbus was, and they were around. It's crazy. Yeah. But my thing is that why was everyone gathering in the Grand Canyon? And that's kind of what I'm also going to be talking about too on my podcast.
That's a very good question.
Is there some significance with the Grand Canyon or something? Because all these weird things are in this Kincaid's Cave, and these Buddhist temples and Egyptian artifacts. And it's like, were they all gathering in there for some reason? Weird stuff.
You've surely heard that story then, that there used to be an ancient civilization that lived deep in the Grand Canyon. Have you?
I'm sure I have. I think it sounds familiar, so I'm sure I have, but I'm not sure.
Might pop up when you're looking into the mummies and everything.
Right.
So how do you actually how do you pick topics for the podcast then? Is it just stuff that you are naturally interested in, or does listeners send you in a topic that they want you to cover, or what way does it work?
Well, people are welcome to message, if they have something that they want to know more about, but they're too, lazy to look it up themselves. I love looking up that type of stuff. So literally send it to me and I'll look it up, and I'll probably make an episode on it, or a TikTok or something. I'll do something with it more if I find it interesting. But yeah, a lot of the stuff that I do on my podcast is just stuff I'm interested in. Like I said, I was into ancient technology and stuff before I had my podcast, and I had so much information, was just like writing papers and stuff on it, but wasn't like doing anything with it. I was just writing it down and putting it in a file on my laptop. Then one day I just was like, you know what, I got to do something with this. I'm going to do something. So I decided to do my podcast. And I used to be one of those tinfoil hat guys who thought like Hillary Clinton was a reptile and Justin Bieber is a reptile and reptilians are ruling the Illuminati. And then I read the Bible also in my early 20s, and because I wasn't sure what I believed in religiously, and so read the Bible, and by the end of it I was atheist by the time I got to the end of it. And so that I also try to incorporate into my podcast because I like to promote positive atheism, and I practice this method called street epistemology, which is a Socratic method of questioning to where you can get to the basis of what people believe and why they believe it. And it's just basically asking questions is all it is. It's just knowing what questions to ask. And I plan on doing a lot more with street epistemology and on my podcast. And that's kind of how I interview people too, is that if you have a belief of something, like I had someone who believed the earth was flat. So I interviewed them. And I don't think she likes me anymore, but I tried. But and then I had Anthony Magnabosco, who is the executive director of Street Epistemology International. He used to be the president, and I've been watching his videos for years, and he's kind of the inspiration for why I wanted to interview people about what they believe and why they believe it. I haven't had anyone religious on my podcast, to talk to and get to the basis of why they believe what they believe. Because I think a lot of people think that as an atheist, I'm just going to be like a firebrand atheist and, yell and scream at you and call you stupid or something, which, that's not at all, what street epistemology is. And that's what a big misconception is, that street epistemology is just asking questions, not enforcing my belief on anybody or calling you stupid or anything. And so anyone religious who wants to be interviewed and what you believe and why, you're welcome to message me pretty much anywhere. We can set something up.
That'd actually be very interesting. But I find a lot of religious people get very defensive when they're asked questions about their religion. So it might be tricky to make happen.
And that's the thing with street epistemology, is that you want to, right off the bat, you want to ensure them that, this isn't a gotcha card. It isn't, to make you feel stupid, and there's not going to be any hard feelings walking away. I just want to know, people don't realize what they believe until they say it out loud a lot of the times, so you may say, do you believe Jesus Christ walked on water? And they say, yes, I believe Jesus Christ walked on water. And then you say, okay, so you're telling me that you believe that a man who was who you believe is the embodiment of God based off of what the Bible says, or, whatever they may have told you. You believe this man walked on water. Have you ever heard of anyone else walking on water? So it's kind of just putting, Anthony Magnabosco puts it as putting pebbles in people's shoes. So it's just kind of getting people to kind of think like, why do I believe this? And
think logically about it.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of thinking logically. So it's a lot about critical thinking. And so I like to do that. And I'm actually hoping to get the stuff together so I can actually go to like a local park and actually talk to random people as they're walking around, do actual in-person street epistemology. So yeah.
Sounds very interesting.
But yeah, that's kind of why I decided to do the podcast, because I have so many interests. I like to talk about religion, ancient technology, and then I'm just a history nerd in general. And then I used to be a big alien guy, so I kind of like to incorporate that into my podcast. But obviously I'm a skeptic now because I read the Bible. I was like, if I have to be skeptical about the Bible, I have to apply that same skepticism to all of my beliefs. So I applied it to my Bigfoot belief. Do I have reasonable evidence to believe in Bigfoot? No, I don't currently, but I'm still open to it. Do I have reasonable evidence for ghosts? No, but I'm open to it, and someone can present it to me on my podcast. Do I have reasonable evidence for aliens? No. Like we have UFOs, which I'm totally willing to, say, yes, they're UFOs. They are unidentified flying objects. Once you jump the gun and say that it's alien, that's when you draw the line, because we don't know. It's unidentified. So you can't say it's alien.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe someday they'll finally let us know that they are aliens. You never know.
Right.
I could literally sit here talking for hours to you about stuff like this, but we better get onto your music. Let the listeners.
Yeah, I guess that's the point of the show, right?
It is. But seriously, I could stay here all day. But I
Shoot,
find that
maybe you'll have to
stuff.
come on my show and we can just
Yeah,
we
you
can
can
just talk about stuff.
probably like a 9-hour episode.
Right.
But do you want to tell the listeners a bit about your music then?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been playing guitar for since I was about 8-9 years old is when my stepdad, because my stepdad is kind of the big musical guy. For me, I wasn't really in on music or anything. I liked listening to country music when I was a kid. But when I was 9, my stepdad came into my life and he was a little bit of a guitarist. He's, was amateur at the time, but he had a couple guitars and I thought it was cool. So I picked it up. I played it for maybe a year or two and it wasn't jarring with me. So I put it down, picked up drum sets instead, practiced with the drums for a year or two. Once again, wasn't really feeling it with the drums. So I traded in my drums, got a new guitar. And then ever since then, that was when I was about 11 or 12 is when I started seriously picking up guitar. I'm all self-taught. I've never had any type of lessons of any sort. So YouTube videos and just sitting there in my room for hours on end, just picking and plucking things. And so that was about when I was 11 or 12. And I started singing when I was about 16 or so. I decided I wanted to do the school talent show one year. And so I went to school and, was just going to do a cover of Crazy Train, the whole song, just, rocking it on guitar, just no vocals or anything. So I did that. Didn't really like it, because I was like, it's missing something. And so I was like, maybe I just need to start singing. Maybe I should try to sing this and play at the same time.
Yeah.
Well, that didn't work out. So I decided to put down the electric guitar a little bit and pick up more acoustic guitar. And that's when, the guitar that's sitting behind me now, that's when that's the first guitar I bought with my own money, saved up money for it, got it with my own. And, I've been singing pretty much ever since. And now I like to think I'm more of a singer than I am a instrumentalist. I'm a lot better of a singer, but I can still rock on the guitar and know a couple things. And right now my laptop's sitting on my piano, and then I have another piano out there that I tinker around on. So I like to play with a couple other things. But my original song, Empty Room, came out earlier this year. I decided I'd been writing a couple songs for a year or so. And then I was just like, I want to publish one, because I was honestly, my mental health was a little, not too good at the time. And so I figured, I need to do something to feel accomplished. I didn't have my podcast at the time. So this is about 2 or 3 months before my podcast. So I was like, I'm just going to record something. So I talked to one of my buddies who's trying to start up an audio, business, and went to his house, and we recorded the song in a couple sessions. And it's called Empty Room. It's out on all platforms, and it's a song that I tried to. At the time, I was once as I said, I was depressed. So that kind of comes through on the song. It's kind of a mellow, chill. It's I wanted it to rock a little bit just because that's how I am. So I wanted a little bit of rock in it, because we kind of talked about just doing it acoustic for a while. Then I was like, no, man, I gotta have them drums in there. I gotta. So I didn't play the drums for it. Actually, the producer Kyle Koch, he actually did the drums, he did the bass, he did the piano, like he rocked it. So I mean, once again, check out Kyle Koch Audio. Seriously, check him out if you want if you're in Michigan and you need audio work done, because he does an awesome job. And he's got his own band called Up All Hours that he jams with too. But I really tried on that song. And then after that, I was like, man, I got to start writing more music, because people liked it. I had a lot of friends that were like, heck yeah, man, I like this song. So I started writing more, and I've got, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 songs written up now, that I just, I'm trying to get. I just bought this house and everything. So I'm trying to get everything straightened around. And then I want to get back into the studio and record either an EP or maybe a full album of some sort.
Yeah.
But money's a thing. So got priorities.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
so hopefully sooner than later, probably not till maybe mid to late next year, that I wouldn't even be able to get into the studio.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's I play I started off kind of country. I play like kind of indie rock, alt rock type of vibe, I guess. But a couple of these songs that I've been writing sound more like pop, but kind of like them. So
good eclectic mix. So
yeah.
Do you find it hard to write songs?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, like I can, my thing is I'll sit down with the guitar and I'll say, okay, the next thing that I play on this, I'm going to write it down into my book, which is sitting off in the corner. It's like, I'm just going to put my fingers somewhere and start plucking something until it sounds good. And then I'm going to write it down. And then I, branch off of that.
Yeah.
So coming up with the music itself, I can do that pretty easily. I can come up with a rhythm and, I can hear the drums and the bass and I can hear everything in my head.
Yeah.
It's just the melody, the vocal melody that I have the biggest trouble with. So like, for example, my song Empty Room, if I'm being honest, it sounds a little flat, but that's kind of the vibe that I wanted for it. At the same time, like my vocals sound a little flat. It's kind of the vibe I wanted. And that's also just kind of how my voice is when I sing too. But I have a hard time coming up with lyrics for sure. I'll write down something and then go on to like another song a couple pages later. And it's like, man, this sounds like the exact same song I was just writing, but just with a slightly different guitar riff. So I kind of feel like I write a lot of sad songs. So I'm trying to work on writing my happy songs. But it's frankly just easier for me to write sad stuff.
Yeah. I've heard before, what is it? There's a famous saying, I could get it wrong now, but sad songs sell and happy songs don't sell as well or something, Right, so you could be onto something with the sad songs.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Who would, is there any major influences you have? Is there anyone that you looked at and made you think, yeah, that's what I want to do? I'm going to pick up the guitar, start writing music.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is, I mentioned I picked up guitar seriously when I was about 11 or 12. And at that same time, my buddy invited me to go see the band Disturbed in concert.
Right.
So I went and saw them at 12 years old, was moshing with Disturbed. And I went to that concert and was like, yes, I need to do this. And I came home, traded in my drum set for a guitar. And there we go. So it kind of was because of Disturbed just rocked so hard. Like, man, I want to see them again. They were so awesome. And I just wanted to do that. But my vocal inspiration mostly comes from a guy named Alan Stone. And he's like an R&B soul singer.
Right.
But so what happened is I was, kind of learning to sing and singing a lot of country songs. Because country is just the easiest to sing and it's the easiest stuff to learn. It's very repetitive, so it's pretty easy to learn. And I came across Alan Stone doing a cover of the song "Sex and Candy" by Marcy Playground, and it was just an acoustic cover of him in the forest doing it. And his voice, it's just incomparable. Like it's so great. Right. Such an amazing vocal range, and not to mention that he can just absolutely shred on the acoustic guitar. Like he's just an amazing musician in general. And I heard him and was like, oh my God, I want to sing like that guy.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did is I just was listening to his music on repeat, watching his videos on repeat, and started, watching like YouTube vocal, exercises and lessons. Yeah. Just so I could do the things that Alan, so not necessarily sound like Alan Stone, but just be able to do the things he was able to do with his voice. I was like, that's just incredible. And I like to think now I actually do pretty well at it when I'm trying. When no one's watching, is when I sound the best, of course. But yeah, he's definitely at the moment, definitely the inspiration for why I even continue to write music, and for a lot of the music that I currently write is definitely because of Alan Stone. He's just he's an awesome guy. He writes awesome music, and I hope. I'm trying to go see him in concert. He's actually going to be coming to Michigan in December, so I might have to try to get some VIP tickets to see him.
Be deadly if you could get backstage and meet him, pick his brain.
Right. Like, oh my gosh, that'd be so awesome. And he actually just came out with like a re-release album. It's called Apart, and he like re-released all of his biggest, what he called his most powerful songs, and the songs that he truly put his all into and all of his heart. And it's just a raw acoustic, no editing whatsoever. It's just raw audio of him singing his most popular songs. And it's like his just raw audio is just crazy. He doesn't even need editing. So yeah, I mean, definitely check out Alan Stone for sure, because he is an awesome musician. He writes some bangers for sure.
I'll definitely have to check him out. I've never actually heard of him before, believe it or not. But I'll definitely have to binge his back catalog.
For sure.
Yeah. So have you played many gigs then?
I've played a couple. So there's, as I mentioned, my first gig was the talent show. I got up there and I did the electric guitar thing, and that didn't work out. Then the next year I actually played this acoustic guitar in the background, and I sang A Great Day to Be Alive by Travis Tritt, and it's a country song. And so I sang that up on stage, and that was like my first gig, and after I did that, I was like, oh yeah, this is fun. This is cool. I was like, I can definitely do this. And so I picked up singing way more after that. And I played at, I did a couple open mics at this place called Road Rangers. That's in, I think it's Taylor, Michigan. And they have open, it's like open jam night. So anyone with any instrument, no instrument, you can just, go up, and they have a whole stage of lights, it's like the whole setup, and it's pretty legit, and they get a pretty big crowd in there. So I went up there, I expected only to play one song, and then I got encored 5 more times. And so I was up there for like an hour, and I was only supposed to be up there for 10 minutes, but they were like, this is fine. That's cool. You can be up there. And then besides that, I was supposed to play at this place called Club Canton. That's off Michigan Avenue, but me and the owner couldn't cooperate on a set date. So, we were like, let's do the 1st of September. And then we agreed on it. Then the day before he changed it. And then, that happened like 5 or 6 times. And so I had to, sorry, can't do that. And so then I did play at this place called Bender's. That's also on Michigan Avenue. It's right down the street. And I played one set there, which was it was about 15, 16 songs is what I played. And that's a smaller bar than Club Canton and Road Rangers is, but it was still crowd and still got to sing a little bit. They wanted me to sing something because they're typically kind of more of a country bar. So they have a guy up there named Sean who sings country songs. And so they're like, hey, can you come here and sing some rock songs, kind of switch it up a little bit. So, so I sang probably 75, about 80% rock songs. And then the other, I had a couple country songs because I have to sing some country songs. It's what I do.
Yeah, exactly.
And I love singing. Some of my favorite songs are country songs. So have to sing those. But yeah, besides that, that's all I've got as far as professional gigs go. I like to busk every now and then, I'll go down to like the park or something, my guitar, and sing a couple songs for people, stuff like that. But, and I'm like the designated campfire song guy. So like if I go to a campfire, Calvin's got to bring his guitar, because if he doesn't, then I'm going to get, cussed out. And so literally everywhere I go, I just bring my guitar now, because there's 99.9% of the time, there's that one person who's like, did Calvin bring his guitar? He's gonna play some songs? And it's only the one time that I don't bring it is when I need it though.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I get you. What can people expect when they come to see you play?
Well, as obviously I'm a bit of a history nerd, and I once upon a time I wanted to be a comedian. So, I guess either way I was going to get behind the microphone somehow, whether it's podcasting, comedy, or, singing or whatever. So you can definitely expect some jokes. I like writing, some jokes and, throwing a couple jokes out, whenever I can, and, kind of, liven up the, I like dad jokes. So be prepared for dad jokes. because I like the cheesiness of them. And I also will throw out some like facts about history, too. I might, throw out, did you know that the Egyptian pyramids, contain 2.3 million blocks each? In each pyramid, there's 2.3 million blocks. So that equates to 9.9 million blocks throughout all of them. So like it's a lot. So, I'll throw out like, a couple, just blips like that before I go on to the next song, or, I'll interact with the crowd. Maybe someone has a song that, I might know, or maybe I know vocally, but I don't know on the guitar. Maybe I can figure out the chords for it up there,
Yeah.
I don't know, throw a song out. But yeah, I try to keep it live. And when I have space to move around, I'll move around. But like with Benders, for example, it was like I was outside and it was on a patio. So it was like a very confined area. So I was literally standing there with my guitar like this the whole time. And like all the equipment's like right up here next to me. And I'm like, but so when I have room to move around, I'm energetic and like to move around, jump around, and, get the crowd interacting and dancing if I can.
Yeah. So. I love that you crack a few jokes, you tell a few facts. But I love the audience interaction. I personally feel like the audience interaction is just as important as the songs.
Absolutely.
I hate when you go to see someone and it's just into one song after the next, and it's like they're ignoring the audience. It's not fun. You might as well just stick on a CD,
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I totally agree. Because that's a good example as to one of the bars that I went to, and I was going to play there, but ended up not going there. I went there, was listening to the musician that they had, and, he was just no, barely any pause in between any of the songs. He wasn't like making eye contact with anybody. He wasn't, he just was singing. He wasn't saying, "Hey, I'm going to go get a drink. I'll be right back." He just would stop singing, put his guitar down and walk away, and it's like, it's just a weird vibe, it's like you're up there presenting yourself to people. So wouldn't you want to give off a good impression?
Exactly.
Wouldn't you want people to check you out? So, I'll throw out my podcast name, like, "Hey, you want to hear my voice more, but not singing, check out my podcast here." And, I'll carry around like little business cards with like my email and my social medias and stuff on it. And, I'll hand that to people and I'll set them up at the tip jar so that people can grab one as they're walking by or something. Yeah. So, you want to, why even get up there and sing if you don't want to, people to continue to listen to you? Because that's the whole point, is I want to get up there, sing for you. You can listen to my music and listen to my podcast and, come back and listen again.
Exactly. Yeah. Convert them into a fan.
Right. Have you
ever thought of doing live streams? Or
I've tried doing live streams a couple times. Sometimes I'll like stream on YouTube or Facebook, I'll live stream there. Like as far as music stuff goes, I'll stream on Facebook stuff. I don't have a huge following on Facebook or Instagram or anything like that. I mean, Instagram is a little bit larger. It's only like 1,000 followers, nothing crazy. I would like to do live streams on TikTok, for example, but I don't have enough followers on TikTok. You need like 1,000 followers or something on TikTok to live stream.
Really?
I learned that. Apparently you need like 1,000 followers before you can even start live streaming.
That's a bit odd.
Yeah, super weird. So I'm trying to get to 1,000 followers so that I can live stream my music and my podcast stuff and interact with people. So follow me on TikTok at Unquestionable Calvin, and you can literally live stream and talk to me. As soon as I get to 1,000 followers, I will 100% do that. I would love to do that. And then for my podcast page, I'll, once in a while on Facebook, I'll do like a live stream talking questions or just ranting about something or, related to the podcast, obviously. And I'll do the same thing on Instagram. And, I'm on literally all social media platforms. So, I mean, you can find plenty of content, whether it's music or podcast related, pretty much anywhere if you look for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Say they both explode, the podcast and the music. They explode at the same time, take off. Which one would you choose? If you could only focus on one. It's a bit of a tough question, I know.
My heart would probably go for music, to be honest. Because that's my first love, is like, I wasn't like into anything as a kid. My dad was a real big car guy, but I never got into cars as a kid. And, once my stepdad came into my life at 9, he introduced me to music, and learned to appreciate music. And like, wow, like he's like, listen to the song, but like, listen to the song. Do you hear the lyrics? Do you hear the drum beat in the background? Do you hear that bass back there? Like he really listening to it.
Really take it in.
Yeah. And just appreciating it. And so music is my love. So if my podcast blew up, for example, but my music didn't, and then 5 years down the line, my music blew up, I would drop the podcast, because I would go for, music. That's always going to be where my heart lies. Because I feel like there's always going to be something I can give for the podcast for music, but for the podcast, I love it. I love talking about it, and I'm never going to stop talking about it. Like, no matter what. I was posting on Facebook just random weird posts. People thought I was crazy before I started my podcast. And I'm like, no, I got to start my podcast so that you understand what I'm talking about. And I just, yeah, I mean, I would always go towards the music for sure, because it's, I can always talk about ancient technology and history and everything, but all in all, I don't have my degree. I'm not an expert, so to say. I don't, I'm not an archaeologist. I don't have any, I guess, anything in the game, I guess, necessary. I'm more so just kind of repeating, peer-reviewed papers and, other people's opinions, and kind of stating my opinions more. But, once again, I'm not an expert. And, I like to talk about history or religion and atheism and stuff. But, once again, you can only go so far with that. You can only say you're an atheist so many times.
Yeah.
So it's like, music is definitely where I would go all in all, and my wife agrees. She was like, if all else fails, you should focus on the music all in all, because,
you can do more with the music.
Exactly. I can do more with it. And, if I explode with music, be like Tom DeLonge from Blink-182, he blew up in music and now he's an alien nerd. Now he literally runs like a space company or something. He doesn't even do music anymore. So it's like, even if something like that were to happen, where I get famous with music and then turn to something like that in the future. But, music is never, I don't plan on ever dropping music.
Yeah. Good. That's good to hear anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bit of a random one now. If you could write a song that could sell 500 million copies or influence 500 other musicians, which one would you pick?
I would say influence 500 other musicians.
Really?
For sure. Yes, I would. Because I'm a teacher. That's what I like to do. I like to learn history and teach it to other people. And I have, childcare and education in my, professional background. So, I'm familiar with actually teaching.
Right.
And so I would love to pass my knowledge and what I know, what I've learned off to other people so that they can succeed. That's what I like to do. I don't have plans to be some multimillionaire musician, but if it comes to me, cool. Obviously I'm not going to turn it down, but if I can pass that off to you and then you become a multimillion dollar musician, and then you say, hey, I listened to this guy named Calvin Smith, while you're on CNN or whatever, that he says, yeah, I listened to this guy named Calvin Smith and he really inspired me, that it helps me out. I help you out. You help me out. Once again, I'm not even expecting people to do that, but I'm just, for context, that would, that's what I would like to do for music. And for example, Alan Stone, Alan Stone inspired me. And so I mentioned Alan Stone, and maybe one day, he'll see it and say, hey, wow, this Calvin guy, he rocks. And, he mentioned me. Cool. I'm glad I could inspire people. And that's all I want, is to inspire other people.
Yeah. I gotcha. It is the better choice. And obviously the more honest choice as well. I feel like people who aren't really in it for the love of music, would pick the money side, you know, the 500 million. They only want to get in, become famous, stuff like that. But I feel like the true musician who actually music would actually mean something to him would want to inspire people.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Yeah. We'll get on to the last couple of questions. So if you could see any musician from history, living or dead, in concert for one night only, who would it be?
Ooh, that's a tough one. That's a really hard one. I mean, first one that comes to mind is either Eric Clapton or Jimi Hendrix. That would be, or I mean, even Joe Satriani would be pretty dope too. Because they were like, I listened to them and they were like, they are just incredible musicians. And Eric Clapton is a big inspiration to me and actually right behind me I have an Eric Clapton record sitting directly behind the computer there, and he kind of inspired me to get more into finger style playing, because he does a lot of that. And so I was like, wow, how is he making those sounds? And talking to my stepdad, he says he uses his fingers, that's how he gets these individual notes. So Eric Clapton is even an inspiration to me as far as that aspect. So I'd probably go Eric Clapton, honestly. Yeah.
Not a bad choice. I love how all three of them are like legendary guitar players.
Right. Yeah. I know. They don't even really sing.
Yeah.
Eric Clapton. Yeah. But, his singing is okay.
Yeah. Let's just say
guitar playing's dope, but
as a singer, he's a great guitarist.
Yeah, exactly.
The next one, if you could spend 24 hours in a room with any musician from history, living or dead, who would it be?
Another hard one. I would say, honestly, probably Phil Collins.
Really?
From Genesis. Yeah. I actually, me and my wife are seriously the biggest Phil Collins fans. Love Phil Collins. He's seriously so underrated. We both saw him in concert. I think last year we saw him in concert, and his concert name was Still Not Dead Yet Tour. Because he's like 80 something years old. He literally was sitting in a chair with a cane the whole concert in the middle of the stage. Oh, man. He's so old. He only stood up for one song, and he stood up for In the Air Tonight, of course. So yeah, spending the day with him, because his songs and his the way he writes his songs, he has such an interesting sound to not only in Genesis but in his solo stuff, his self-titled stuff. It's really interesting. So I'd love to sit down and talk to Phil Collins.
Yeah, that is actually one I haven't had before on the podcast.
Really?
I haven't had that answer before. It's an interesting one. I wouldn't blame you. I could see why you could pick him. Yeah. I also love him as an actor. He's a really good actor. Did you ever see that film Buster he did?
No, I never saw that.
Oh, you have to check it out. It's about, there was this big train robbery in England in 1962, and he plays one of the robbers. It's a really good movie.
Really? Huh.
Yeah.
I'm definitely gonna watch that.
Do you won't be disappointed. Huh. So the next one then, the final one. If there was a song that could appear on the soundtrack to your life, what would it be?
So one that comes to mind is the one that comes to mind is they're both Alan Stone songs, and one is called Chippin' Away. It's more of a uppity type of song. It's just basically about the daily grind, waking up, drinking your coffee, grinding away, you're chipping away, and getting back to bed, and you're chipping away. And so that's kind of that's what I do. I'm a hard worker, and I like to keep myself busy all the time, whether I'm at work. If I'm not at work, I'm at home doing home repairs. If I'm not doing home repairs, I'm writing music. If I'm not doing music, I'm studying history. If I'm not doing history, I'm on another podcast. I'm literally always doing something. And I'm just chipping away, getting, as much money as I can, pinching pennies where I can. But other than that, he has another song called Circle, and it's a lot more of a it's a chill song. It sounds a little sad, but it's another song comes up as Bed I Made by him, and I'll talk about that. But Circle is more of, just kind of, it's being really open with yourself and with your feelings, and being able to be humble and realize, when you're in the wrong, and realize where you can improve and what you can do better. That's kind of what he talks about in the song Circle. And I was like, yeah, I'm always striving to do better and be a better person, and do what I can for my family and for my community. And so the song relates to me. And so I sing that song a lot. And it almost makes me emotional, because it's a really great song. He actually added that on to his new album, where he released the raw songs. That's one of the songs that he re-released, and he sings it raw. And it's like, last night, me and my wife listened to it, and I was just about crying because of how just great it is, just as pure vocals.
Yeah.
But then he also has a song called Bed I Made. And that's basically, he at the end of the day, all your worries, need to be put in the past. You can't put all the bad thoughts in the past. You don't need to hang on to that. Once you can have a crappy day, but once you get in bed and you lay down, you close your eyes, you can forget about everything that happened that day and start over new the next day and make it a better day. And make it better for you and for others as well. So that's the whole point of that song as well. So that resonates with me, because I don't like to hang on to things. I don't hold grudges with people. I can have a debate, like, for example, on my podcast I had Robin, who I talked about the earth being flat. She was arguing that the earth was being flat, and we had a little bit of a disagreement at the end, but at the end, before we hung up, you say, despite all of our disagreements, love you. But, we just agree to disagree, and you learn to, put disagreements aside, and just, life is short. There's no point in holding grudges or anything. So when you go to bed at night, just, move on. So those are 3 songs that really resonate with me for sure. So it's kind of a toss up between those ones.
Yeah. No, they're great picks and great messages behind them as well. Yeah. So, before I let you go, is there a message you'd like to leave the listeners with?
I guess you can check out my podcast, Unquestionable with Calvin Smith. It's available on all streaming platforms and on YouTube, Unquestionable Podcast, or you can just type it into Google, Unquestionable Podcast, and I'm, pretty much the whole page. You can check me out on TikTok and all social media platforms as well. And then my music, you can check out Empty Room on Spotify and all other streaming platforms, and it's also on YouTube. And give that a listen, share it with your friends and family. If you're interested in being a guest on my podcast when I get back from my hiatus, you can email me at calsmithmusicinfo@gmail.com, and we can try to set up an interview so we can talk about what you believe and why you believe it. Or if you're interested in having a debate with me, I'm totally open to actually having a formal debate with somebody too on really any topic at all. And I'd be willing to do that. I think that'd be interesting to do with the podcast. So if you want to have I don't know, do you believe in God? Do you want to debate on it? Let's go. But that's pretty much it. And keep an eye out for when I get back to recording podcasts. I'm hoping, I don't know, it may not even be until beginning of next year. But I'm going to try, to get back sooner than later.
can feel my own heartbeat. The echoed voices, but nobody is speaking. All the tears that were shed, your love for me is dead. I wish the pain would end. My walls are caving in. I can't help but feel like I'm lost in an empty room. But all that's missing here, baby, if we try to work this out, you can stay around, we won't miss out and get lost in your eyes and not this room. Baby, it could be just me and you. I can't help but feel like I'm lost in an empty room. But all that's missing here is you.
Hey guys, I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, rate and review us on iTunes. Find us and follow us on your favourite podcast player of choice. And of course, you can now rate the podcast on Spotify. You can find us on all social media at Concerts That Made Us Podcast. And of course, don't forget to check out the website at www.concertsthatmadeus.com. If you'd like to support the show, you can do so by signing up at patreon.com/Concerts That Made Us. So now, all that's left to say is, happy holidays. I hope everyone has a great Christmas, and I'll talk to you next week. Keep rocking.
Hey, what are you guys still doing here? The show's over. It's over. You can go home. Go on. We'll see you next time. We'll be here. Bye.